Now, the Three Martini Lunch with Greg Corombos and Jim Geraghty.
And welcome, everyone, to the Monday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Along with Jim Geraghty of National Review, I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Sorry, folks. All crazy martinis once again today. It wasn't even a hard choice. Crazy, crazy, crazy across the board. The only difficult choice was which crazy ones to include today. Before we get into crazy martini number one, though, Jim, I have a suggestion. Over the weekend, we had a couple of Democrats officially get into the presidential race. Elizabeth Warren in Massachusetts and Amy Klobuchar in Minnesota. Amy Klobuchar did her announcement outside in Minnesota in frigid temperatures and in a snowstorm. And I would officially like to nominate Amy Klobuchar to decide when schools are open and closed in Northern Virginia. I don't want her to be superintendent of any of these schools because I think she'd be too liberal in deciding what the curriculum is. But in terms of deciding when we go to school, she's my choice.
I like that, Greg. And if you're wondering why are Greg and Jim a little more irritable than usual this morning, I will point out that we got the word last night, delayed opening here in Authenticity Woods and all across the Northern Virginia area, in large part because of expectations of freeze and some snow was coming. Well, Greg, I don't know how it was in your neighborhood. I look out the window this morning. You can see my grass, and it's not like it's growing in winter, right? So I've got the peach fuzz level green stuff on my grass, and you could still see it. In other words, it was not deep enough to cover recently mowed grass, no ice on the roads, no danger of power lines coming down, no severe winds, not even cold temperatures. It's raining, but of course we had a 2-hour delay opening there. So I got to give a little bit of credit to Amy Klobuchar for the toughness. I just want to observe, Greg, like if she'd had nice weather, would we be talking about her? Like, it was kind of a blessing in disguise. Everyone's like, wow, look at her. There's snow accumulating on her head as she speaks. If this gets any worse, she's going to cut open a tauntaun. This is, and so she did, so give a little bit of credit for being tough out there, the crowd that was out there. I don't know if America wants Elsa to be the next president, but we'll see.
Elsa's an autocrat, as we've learned clearly from the Disney movies. Yeah, we had no school today where I live. They canceled it last night before a flake or a drop happened. It started as snow, then quickly turned to rain, and this morning it was nothing but wetness. But the superintendent did play the piano just before he officially canceled school yesterday, before anything had happened. So way to go, everybody. All right, so let's get to Crazy Martini number one. Ralph Northam, governor of Virginia. We've talked about him a lot over the past, really almost 2 weeks now, ever since the infanticide comments, and especially since the blackface scandal erupted a week ago Friday. He now says he's not going anywhere. He's done a few interviews now, one with the Washington Post, one with Gayle King on CBS this morning. Here's a quick clip from the CBS interview that ran, I believe, this morning or possibly even Sunday morning.
I'm a leader. I've been in some very difficult situations, life and death situations, taking care of sick children. And right now, Virginia needs someone that can heal. There's no better person to do that than a doctor. Virginia also needs someone who is strong, who has empathy, who has courage, and who has a moral compass.
Okay, we'll get to that in a second. To the Washington Post, he says, quote, "It's obvious from what happened this week that we still have a lot of work to do. We do. There are still some very deep wounds in Virginia, and especially in the area of equity," he said. "There are ongoing inequities to access to things like education, healthcare, mortgages, capital, entrepreneurship. And so this has been a real, I think, an awakening for Virginia. It has really raised the level of awareness for racial issues in Virginia. And so we're ready to learn from our mistakes." Jim, what do you think?
The only defense I will make of Northam here, Greg, is the Virginians did make a serious mistake when they elected him in 2017. That's how they're responsible for this circumstance. No, it really infuriating. I did obviously vehemently disagreed with his comments on abortion and his suggestion that for some period of time after birth, he was okay with snuffing out the young life. The initial scandal was bad. The photo, the weird, admitting it Friday night and then on Saturday saying, "Oh, wait, no, I rushed to judgment about myself." And I misremembered being in that photo when I had not been in that photo and things like that. All that I find extraordinarily implausible. But now it's really starting to irk me, Greg, and for many reasons, but high among them, it was a fascinating tour de force of a PR standard that's not supposed to work. And, until proven otherwise, I think it is working. This argument of, I think we can all learn a lesson from this. No, we can't. Well, the lesson is don't vote for Ralph Northam. No one else is responsible for his decision to put on the shoe polish on his face that he described in such wonderful detail. If it's him under the hood, that's his responsibility. If he's the one who took the picture, that's his responsibility. He has this, cock and bull story about, somebody might have played a trick on me, or it might have been a mix-up, and the med school's doing an investigation. We have to wait until that investigation, It's like OJ looking for the real killers. Greg, it just is each time he gets into this, he makes it worse. And I really resent this implication that somehow this is something the state needs. No, Governor, you did this, right? At one point he says, we need sensitivity training even into the K through 12 age range. He's now saying Virginia's kindergartners need to be additional sensitivity training. No, the problem is not start with Virginia's kindergartners. The problem did not start with Virginia's school children or his cabinet or anything else. Its problem is with him. And it's just galling to see him go out and do this. And, now that, because of the obvious political ramifications, Virginia Democrats, who were perfectly happy with getting rid of him when they thought they were going to replace him with Fairfax, now are terrified because they've created this sequence of dominoes where you can't easily remove any one of them without saying, well, okay, blackface is bad, but sexual assault is okay. Or alternately, well, blackface is bad and sexual assault is bad, but blackface, if you did it your freshman year of college, we're willing to give a pass through. And the more this goes on, the more intolerable it is that all three of them could possibly remain in their positions when all is said and done, Greg.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's like a Democratic Jenga tower. You take out one piece and the whole thing comes down. And there was a Democratic member of the House of Delegates who was all fired up to file articles of impeachment against Lieutenant Governor Fairfax due to the second accuser coming forward late last week. And now those have been pulled back, and a full investigation, full due process. Funny how that term has come back around, and now everybody's for it on the left. Weird.
Yeah, the party got to him. Now, look, I'll make one minute molecule of concession or observation here, which is that, look, if Justin Fairfax is innocent of the charges of the accusations of sexual assault, how does he go about clearing his name? Right? He hasn't been charged with any crime. By the way, as far as I read it, under both circumstances, the statute of limitations has not expired. He could be charged with a crime if the victim came forward and authorities determined there was enough evidence to proceed with the case. That does not appear to be likely to occur in this situation. So we have two women who, as far as we can tell, don't know each other. One of them has, it's openly said she's a Democrat and has no discernible partisan motivation for making this charge. What is a guy like Fairfax supposed to do? And a lot of Democrats are saying, well, whatever his defense he wants to launch, he can do it as a private citizen. He has to step down, et cetera, et cetera. You'd be very curious to see what method these uncomfortable Virginia Democratic state legislators want to go forward with. Is it something like the hearings we saw in the Kavanaugh confirmation vote? This idea of let's hear from both of them in either public or private testimony, weigh the validity, see any type of supporting evidence they can bring. The second accuser said she had made comments to friends and Facebook messages. Now, that was 4 years after the incident, but presumably maybe in the intervening years, she had discussed the incident with other people and presumably named Fairfax, and that would appear to suggest that, okay, this isn't something she just all of a sudden came up with. This is something she's been talking about consistently over a period of years. Look, maybe you add all this up and Virginia Democrats say, okay, we got to get rid of this person. But the idea that they had this introduction and then the next morning all of a sudden, whoa, let's not rush to judgment here, indicates that Democrats desperately want to find a scenario where everybody, where this issue, all of these controversies go away, the scandal goes away, and everybody stays in place because, look, Lord knows they can't have a Republican in charge of things, right, Greg?
That's right. That
would really be scandalous.
That's pretty much what Congressman Don Beyer said yesterday about why we can't get rid of Mark Herring as Attorney General. Do you know who'd replace him? Oh, we can't have that.
This is unacceptable unless it's a Republican replacement, and then it's acceptable.
All right, let's move on to our crazy martini now. Let's move to the new Congresswoman from Minnesota's 5th Congressional District, Ilhan Omar. She has made a few eyebrows raised for her anti-Semitic comments, and she's not done. This started with a tweet from Glenn Greenwald. You might remember him as James Snowden's buddy, and I think he writes for The Intercept. He tweets out, GOP leader Kevin McCarthy threatens punishment for Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib over their criticisms of Israel. It's stunning how much time U.S. political leaders spend defending a foreign nation, even if it means attacking free speech rights of Americans. Ilhan Omar, the congresswoman, tweets back, "It's all about the Benjamins, baby," which leads the opinion editor at The Forward, a Jewish woman, to say, "Would love to know who Ilhan Omar thinks is paying American politicians to be pro-Israel, though I think I can guess." Omar tweets back with an exclamation point, AIPAC, at which point the opinion editor fires back, "Please learn how to talk about Jews in a non-anti-Semitic way. Sincerely, American Jews." And then Chelsea Clinton jumps in and says, "Co-signed as an American, we should expect all elected officials, regardless of party, and all public figures to not traffic in anti-Semitism." So, Jim, there's certainly a silver lining here that a lot of folks on the left are speaking out about Tlaib and about Omar and their constant comments, which I think most reasonable people would brand as anti-Semitic. But what do you make of this becoming almost a daily event here?
Greg, I can't stand anti-Semites, but I really can't stand dumb anti-Semites. And some might argue that that's a Venn diagram that looks like a circle. But I just want to observe that, so here's the thing. It's morally wrong to say American politicians support Israel because of AIPAC. It's also factually wrong to say just because of donations from AIPAC. Maybe they find AIPAC's arguments and such persuasive. But it's factually wrong to say American politicians support Israel because of donations from AIPAC, because AIPAC itself does not make donations. They endorse candidates, and we can, reasonably surmise that AIPAC members are likely to donate to candidates that the organization supports. But it's not like, here's a check from AIPAC. I was going to be critical of Israel, but now we're going to change. And I kind of went off on a little bit of a rant about this today, Greg, because here's the thing. Because we see this sometimes in the gun debate, right? That, you're just because of the big money from the National Rifle Association. In terms of campaign spending, the National Rifle Association spending is fairly small compared to a lot of interest groups. What really makes people do what the vote along the lines the NRA wants is because they know the NRA communicates very effectively to a whole bunch of voters in a whole bunch of key states, and they don't want to get on the wrong side of those voters. They know this is an issue that motivates people. My suspicion is it's a very similar situation with AIPAC, but again, AIPAC does not write checks. AIPAC does not give money directly to campaigns. And the idea that your opponents, the only reason they could possibly have their viewpoint is because they've been bought off by some sort of sinister, wealthy, powerful, basically is saying, my little mind cannot understand why somebody would disagree with me on this. That there is no reasonable different viewpoint. There is no other side of the story. The only way you could possibly think Israel is a good place and it's a U.S. ally and a democracy in the Middle East and we should support them is because you're being paid to have that position. Now, this is a situation where I have a great visual aid that doesn't work well on an audio-only podcast. You look at pictures of Hamas, you look at pictures of Hezbollah. Can we think of any reason why Americans might say, I don't like those guys? Could it be the masks and the AK-47s and the Hitler salutes, the marching, the threats to drive the Jews to the ocean, the threats to wipe Israel? Like, doesn't any of that seem like the sort of thing most Americans might say, I do not like those guys? The only counterexample I can think of, Greg, there's a very vivid picture of a bunch of, I believe it was Hamas members who are training kids to be suicide bombers. The little kid's there. He's got his little kid version of the suicide bomber vest. The rest of them are wearing suicide bomber vests. But the Hamas members are all wearing white cloaks and white hoods with two little eye holes. So you can imagine what it resembles, Greg. And as I said, this is the only people who like stuff like that are in the Virginia state government. This is my attempt to tie all of our martinis together today. So, now you look at Israel. Now, look, maybe you love Israel, maybe you hate Israel, but you look at Israel. Like I said, it's democracy, it's multi-ethnic, it's on human rights, it's better than Hamas and Hezbollah and the Palestinian Authority. My lone trip to Israel years and years ago, Greg, I came to the conclusion that Israel had three things in abundance. The first was attractive women. The second was automatic weapons. And the third thing was attractive women carrying automatic weapons, which I suspect cuts down on the sexual harassment a great deal. Look, there are a lot of reasons Americans would look at Israel and say, oh, there's a society that's kind of like ours. There's a bunch of folks we can relate to. There are folks who had our back in a whole bunch of different fights. They look at Hamas and Hezbollah and the group supporting the Palestinian cause, and they don't relate to them. They don't look at them and say, oh, I can understand where they're coming from. They seem like a reasonable bunch of folks as they teach their kids how to be suicide bombers. So anyway, so that's where, like, and all of this, like, either the Congresswoman sees this and pretends not to, or my suspicion is that she's just flat out, she has a psychological barrier of denial about it. Because if she did recognize this, she'd have to say, oh, okay, well, a lot of Americans don't support Israel because they're anti-Muslim or anti-Arab or hateful people, or they've been bought off by these powerful interests and stuff like that. They prefer Israel because they think Israel is the better country, the country that's more respectful, more aligned with our values, et cetera, et cetera. And she doesn't want to acknowledge any of that stuff. So she invents the vast anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. But I think what's particularly galling here is you can see how much the Democrats are just barely struggling to raise their correction. There are some who are coming out and saying, whoa, this is unacceptable. But we'll see if there's any serious action taken by Democratic leadership, Greg. My suspicion is that little will come of this.
It just baffles me. It just absolutely baffles me that people can't figure out why we're friends with Israel. It's pretty easy to figure out. Like you said, they're not training people to kill Westerners. They're a democracy. They're by far the most stable country in the region. There are some other fairly responsible actors in the region, depending on who the leader is at the moment. Jordan and Egypt are doing better right now. Turkey had been a pretty good ally, but that's heading in the wrong direction. And so we just see eye to eye on a whole host of national security and other international issues. So it makes a lot of sense.
It's not hard to look at cases of Israeli history and find, examples where we might not agree with some of their tactics, some of their methods. They live in a rough neighborhood, and the Israelis have always used every tool at their disposal. There are times we might have disagreements with that. We might say, hey, by building settlements here, you're kind of exacerbating tensions and stuff like that. But when the alternative is Hamas and Hezbollah,
right,
this is not that hard a choice, Anyway, that's where we are, Greg.
Crazy number 3. Let's get back on the campaign trail. While Elizabeth Warren and Amy Klobuchar were freezing as they made their announcements this weekend, Cory Booker was already in Iowa. Cory Booker made so many stops over the past couple days, he lost his voice. Some folks said he was doing his best Sherrod Brown impression. Either way, he is a full-fledged, full-throated supporter of the Green New Deal, which we talked about in glowing terms if you were with us late last week. And he has decided that not only do we need to do this, we need to explain that this is on scale with some of America's most noble endeavors ever. First, he talked about going to the moon. Then he decided to compare it to World War II.
We need to be bold again in America. We need to have dreams that other people say are impossible. We need to push the bounds of human potential because that is our history. And when the planet has been in peril in the past, who came forward to save Earth from the scourge of Nazi and totalitarian regimes? We came forward. Who came forward to save the planet from, or continents from financial ruin? We came forward with the Marshall Plan. Our history is standing up and saying, look, humanity is in crisis. America is going to be light and the hope.
Jim, there's got to be just scores of history professors who actually understand what was happening during and after World War II who are pulling their hair out right now.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to borrow a lot from my colleagues, Kevin Williamson and Jonah Goldberg. Jonah Goldberg loves to write about the moral equivalent of war, or meow, as it's known as There's a reason people keep invoking World War II as a rallying cry, as one of the, maybe the finest hour of this country, certainly one of the moments of one of our most titanic and epic struggles. That's because, look, pretty far and wide, you can get an agreement. Hey, that Hitler guy, he was really evil, although apparently not Candace Owens. Apparently some folks have some disagreements with that, who said, well, really the problem was he wanted to expand his borders and he was a globalist. Nah, that's, to paraphrase Norm Macdonald, you know why I think Hitler was such a bad guy, Greg?
Why?
All the genocide. That's step one, right? So there's a you could be on the far left, you could be on the far right, unless you're really on the fringe. You look at World War II, you watch Band of Brothers, You watch the Pacific. You read about, you're like, yes, this is what makes me proud to be an American. Those were dark hours, and we stood there. We stormed the beaches at Normandy, went all the way to Berlin. But one of the other reasons you invoke that titanic fate of the world, struggle, is because in a circumstance like that, you're willing to do certain actions you might otherwise find morally, let's say, complicated at the very least, if not morally wrong. We would really not see too many circumstances in which we'd say, hey, you know what? It's okay to drop an atomic bomb on a city. But Hiroshima and Nagasaki, most Americans believe, you know what? That ended the war. It forced the Japanese to surrender. It prevented a violent conquest of the Japanese islands. It had to be done, even though in the end, you're dropping a giant bomb on a city full of civilians. This kind of philosophy of, well, this is war. The stakes are so high that we have to be willing to do anything to achieve our goal, even if it's messy, even if it's violent, even if it's morally complicated, even if it violates some of our normal principles. The stakes are so high, we have no choice but to take this step. That's a very seductive mindset to get into. Because if you are fighting Nazis, then everything is on the table. Everything is justified. That's why you saw this argument. You see some people who think of themselves as the defenders of the First Amendment, but then they'll say, no, it's okay to punch a Nazi in the face. Oh, by the way, very important detail here. They get to define who they think is a Nazi. So all of a sudden, the Nazi goes from the guy goose-stepping around, wearing the swastika on his armband and making the salute, to somebody who disagrees with me, or someone who said something controversial or something like that. And everything you see in the Green New Deal is to basically, you hear the arguments both from Booker and from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and most Democrats who buy into the fate of the planet is at stake, right? Now, I hate to say, if somebody said to me, Jim, the planet will explode in 5 minutes unless you punch Greg in the face, I'd feel really bad about it, Greg. But I don't want to see the planet explode, and thus I would do that sort of thing. When you say the fate of the planet is at stake, then anything can be justified, including retrofitting every single building in the United States at the phenomenal expense it would include, banning cars, cutting the U.S. military in half, pulling back all U.S. Troops from overseas, which, oh, by the way, that would generate a lot of wars, right? You'd end up having a lot of wars, which would generate a lot of carbon emissions, Greg. But my other suspicion there is that also maybe eventually the long term it kills enough people so you think it reduces carbon emissions. Anyway, the idea here that Booker's tapping into and that so many Democrats want to tap into is, folks, the stakes are so high that we can't do things the way we normally do them, i.e. following the Constitution, requiring building consensus, understanding recognizing those who object, et cetera, et cetera. That's what we're at here. To say nothing of the fact that basically, a very popular idea is to associate your opposition with fascism, just because you don't buy onto a document that talked about farting cows and stuff like that.
Okay, a couple points here. First of all, could you at least ask how much the end of the world would be delayed before you punch me in the face?
Oh, that's a good point. I probably should have asked for more details on that. Yeah, fair. Just 60 seconds. You're gonna punch him every 60 seconds now. Anyway, yeah. So it's that terrible device in the island on Lost.
Yes. And secondly, I love the complete contradiction here of Cory Booker talking about how the United States came through with the Marshall Plan, which was designed to rebuild Europe to stop the spread of communism. And so our 21st century version of the Marshall Plan is to adopt socialism.
When we talk about the Green New Deal, one way or another, you're going to take away people's choices from them, right? You're going to take away energy sources. You're going to say, look, you no longer have the option of having your electricity from coal, from natural gas, from liquid natural gas, from oil, nuclear. They don't like nuclear. There's one version of the plan floating around that was kind of okay with it. In other words, in order to achieve this important goal, i.e. saving the planet and or, adjusting 1 degree according to our calculations a century from now, we need to take away a whole bunch of your rights. And that's not, that part of the deal, they never seem to emphasize all that much. But again, that's one of the reasons they're calling it, by the way, if they had called it Green, Hiroshima, and Nagasaki, would people have signed on to it quite as much, Greg?
Probably not.
We are going to hit your life like an atomic bomb. That's what our plan's going to do. Yeah, that's not a great sales pitch.
There's 3 steps to this, basically. Number one, there's not exactly the consensus that the left would like us to think there is on this stuff, because, a lot of the projections would already have Florida underwater or no ice at all at the polls. And so those are constantly being changed and updated and so forth. Secondly, would it actually change the climate over the next few decades if we gave away all these rights? And even if it did, would we want to be living in a society where we have to give up all this stuff? And my answer would be no.
I mean, look, we can eliminate a lot of carbon emissions by going back to subsistence farming. I mean, a lot of people would die. That's the trick. But also, here's the thing: dead people emit less carbon emissions. Now, look, I realize, Greg, you and I are, in the eyes of a lot of climate extremists or a lot of the radical environmentalists, you and I are we're committing heresy here. We're denialists. By the way, I completely believe the climate change is going on. I completely believe that 7 billion people generating carbon is going to put out more carbon than when the planet had 6 billion people or 5 billion people, et cetera, et cetera. I also note that human beings are really good at adapting and really good at making technological innovations that we could reduce our carbon emissions. But I don't think the idea of having the government from on high with a bunch of crazed millennials in charge is going to be the ones to make that happen. But, here's the thing: when we say this kind of stuff, Greg, people hate us, and the radical environmentalists, if they had the opportunity, they would burn us at the stake. Except, Greg, it would generate more carbon emissions.
They can't win. Thankfully, They can't win. Jim, we'll see if we have any good news tomorrow. Keep our fingers crossed.
This is a weirdly violent 3 Martini Lunch. That's what happens when the news gets like this. Punching and burned at the stake and, nukes going off. Hey, at least it's Friday.
Yeah. Uh-huh. All right. Jim Geraghty's with National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. And don't forget to join us again on Tuesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.